Welcome to the Volunteer and Combination Officer section weekly webinar series. This week, we're going to talk about the first person you are hiring is the fire chief. And we're going to talk to three people who have lived through this process. And so really excited to have you all attend and have these presenters share with you their experience. As usual, this is using voice over IP technology, through your computers, speakers, or headsets. If the screen should freeze up, log off, log back in. That usually takes care of any problem like that. But if you have a problem, you can email webinars@ifc.org and they will try to help you out. So we don't really have any handouts. We will be monitoring the chat session. If you have things you want to talk about, if you have questions and answers, you can do that in the chat session or in the question and answer section as well. If you have a question that is really pertinent to what the presenters are talking about, I'll probably stop and have them explain a little bit more about the question that you might have. So here are some of the things the Volunteer and Combination Officer is involved with. We're pretty busy compared to other sections within the IFC. We are the largest section within the IFC. Fire Rescue International has already happened. Symposium in the Sun, yes, it is in the direct path of the current hurricane heading towards Florida, towards Tampa. We have no idea what it's going to do. If we could predict the weather, we wouldn't be sitting here. So we're going to wait until probably Friday and see what the damage is, or maybe Monday if the damage is really, really bad, and determine whether we're going to continue with the conference, whether the hotel is going to be ready for us, as not just this hotel, but then it's that hotel as well as restaurants and that sort of thing. So Symposium in the Sun is still on schedule. And as I told some people yesterday, take a deep breath and say a prayer. Number one, say a prayer for the people in Florida that they don't have to experience this new tornado or new hurricane, which apparently is one of the worst ones that we've seen in recent history. So I'm not going to read the rest of the stuff to you. You all can see that. And if you got any questions on that, if you email jmbuckman3rd@gmail.com, then I will be glad to help you answer that. So we've already talked about some of these things. Next, in 2025, we have the Wildland Urban Interface coming up in March. Fire Rescue Med is in May, and the Community Risk Reduction Leadership Conference is in May also. If you've never attended the December Technology Summit, I would encourage you to see about doing that. We know what the future of technology, the future of the fire service is going to involve technology. Chief Robinson, who's one of our panelists today, is looking at 3 brand new ambulances or looking at delivery of 3 ambulances. I'm sure there's some technology on those units that they haven't had on units before. So Vector Solutions is one of the friends and partners with the VCOS. If you do not currently use Vector Solutions, we encourage you to consider it and understand that there are discounts available to VCOS members. So we certainly appreciate you all making that consideration for Vector Solutions as a product, as one of the products you might use in your fire department. So we have 3 presenters that have experience being the first person they hired in an all-volunteer staff department, from a small department to a large multi-station department. So with that, I want to call on Chief Spencer Cheatham from the town of West Point, Virginia, to introduce himself and give you a little background. Spencer?
Hello and welcome. I hope you all are well. As Chief said, I'm from the town of West Point in Virginia. We're right between Richmond and Williamsburg, just a small town, about 4,000. And then we also protect a rural area around us. We're very small, only 6 square miles, with about 2 of that marsh. So, but we do have a lot of heavy industry here. We've got a pulp mill. In our department, I got hired 2.5 years ago, and have been enjoying it. I've been with the department 29 years, so I was fortunate to become volunteer to the first fire chief, and have enjoyed that, although there's been plenty of challenges. So I've I'd ask Chief Buckman to let me know if there's anything else I need to tell y'all.
Well, I think Spencer's also been involved with the International Association of Fire Chiefs Workforce Solutions, traveled the country, interacting with volunteer firefighters and volunteer leadership to with delivering some of the products that the International Association of Fire Chiefs has developed. So that's one thing you forgot to mention there, Spencer.
Absolutely.
But thank you. Our next presenter, I've known him for a long time. I still have the pocket knife he gave me like 20 some odd years ago. And it's Chief Norvin Collins. When he was with Tualatin Valley, Oregon, he was researching volunteer fire departments in the country. And my department was one of the departments, I don't know why, but he picked and came to visit me. So Chief Collins, I want to introduce yourself.
Thank you, Chief Buckman. And yeah, it's been a day and a half for the two of us knowing each other. You recollect the pocket knife. I recollect when we went up and did a Beyond Hoses and Helmets for the first time up in Fairbanks, and there's a picture of the two of us sitting on Santa's lap at the North Pole, coming to that time of year. So we've been doing this together for quite a while. Welcome, everyone. I'm Norvin Collins, as Chief said. I've been in the industry for a little over 36 years, been a certified paramedic or a licensed paramedic, since that's what Oregon has, for that entire time. I've been fortunate to be a chief officer, whether it was a division chief when I retired out of Tualatin Valley. I was the first chief of a small island department, Sauvie Island, just outside of the Portland, Oregon area. We like to joke that it's the same size as Manhattan, just the opposite end of the population spectrum. I was the first chief there, and I spent the last 5 years as the chief of San Juan Island, up as far north and west in our country and still be in the States. I could actually see the lights of downtown Victoria, and I could get to Canada faster than I could get back to the States. I've been an active participant in the VCOS for a number of years, serving on the board, being part of education, and otherwise, and it's an honor to be here and visit with you all. And I do the same thing that Spencer did. Did I miss anything, John?
No. Well, except, can you see Moscow from your house?
I'm not that close.
Good. Well, our final panelist for today is Chief Mike Robinson. I've known Mike for a few years, met him at the National Fire Academy. He'll tell you where he was a former training chief, and he's taught a whole lot at the National Fire Academy, and now he is a career chief in what used to be an all-volunteer multi-station department. So, Chief Robinson, please introduce yourself.
Conference room at the Horton Ambulance Factory in Grove City, Ohio. We're in the process of converting our volunteer ambulance fleet into a career fleet as a result of billing monies and some other initiatives. I have the honor and privilege to be the first fire chief of the Carroll County, Maryland Fire and EMS department. Carroll County is one of the 5 metro counties of Baltimore City, but we're also the most rural county in the metro area. We're about 40 miles from downtown DC and about 25 miles from downtown Baltimore. We have a population of 176,000, and we have 14 volunteer fire companies that 3 years ago we began with a plan to make it an integrated combination system. I'm now in my 49th year in the fire service. Started at the young age of 16 in Anne Arundel County, Maryland, where Trish Wolford, who's our first vice president of IAFC, is currently the chief, but she wasn't even born yet when I started. I left there and went to work for Baltimore County, Maryland, and I spent 33 years in that large combination system, and I retired as a deputy chief of operations back in 2015. Did a lot of teaching for the NFA over a 31-year period. Have been very active in the Maryland Fire Service, and still a member of 2 volunteer companies. But 3 years ago, I was hired by the Board of County Commissioners, and I actually started out being called a director, and that was a very defined position. That's all the volunteers wanted me to be called, but I changed the legislation, and now I am a chief/director. It's been a interesting experience to come into our oldest station is 200 plus years old, and to come into a very traditional volunteer fire service where all the assets are owned by the volunteer corporations, and Male being a part of county government who has the legal authority to manage the department. But in order to be successful, I've learned very much that we have to be a true partnership, and that's what we try to do each and every day. So right now we have 232 career positions, and we've got about 1,000 active volunteers. We have an integrated chain of command. Our highest ranking career person on duty around the clock is a captain/shift commander, and they actually fall below the volunteer fire chiefs who have the top authority position within the chain of command. The only people that rank them are myself and my 3 subordinate staff chiefs. So it's a partnership. We're evolving each and every day, and we're trying to keep things balanced because our jurisdiction has been historically an agricultural community. It's now very much a bedroom community of both Baltimore and DC, and the people that move there want to keep tax rates low. So my mandate is to make the system work. So glad to be here, and I'll try to share some things with you.
Well, I know this isn't, we have some prepared questions, but as I told you, we're probably going to get off of that. I'm going to call you guys by your first name because we all got chiefs there. But Mike, you mentioned something, and I've heard about this before in other departments are you the director or the fire chief? So as they're looking to hire somebody, that title and job description is important. So you can explain a little bit about that and how that worked out for you?
So we have 12 different agencies under the county government, and the heads of each agency are called directors. So the legal title is director, but the title in front of my name is chief. That's the compromise I worked out with the commissioners because we wanted to be able to identify as a fire service person. And when I go to we have a very active Metro Chiefs organization in Maryland, which are the chiefs of all the organizations. So I wanted to be able to come to that table with the title of chief. So my title is chief, and the position is called director. So it fulfills both needs.
Spencer
Mike,
or
can I
Norman,
ask you a quick question?
Sure.
Because I'm curious on that one. Because out west, statute, at least for Oregon, Washington, I believe it's the same in California, statute actually states that it's a delegation of authority from the board of directors or the board of commissioners directly down to the fire chief, which then has the legal right to enact fire code, respond on fires, and do what we do. So therefore, the title of chief is vitally important for those of us out west, whether you're in an all-volunteer department as the chief or you're in a combination of career department. How does that play out from a legislative standpoint with you back in Maryland as a director as opposed to a statutory chief?
Okay, it's a great question. So exactly what you said that occurs in the West Coast is where my authority is. So we are under what's called Chapter 37. It's on our internet site. And when I got there was 2 paragraphs, and it defined it as the director. So I actually changed and went through legislation that was approved by our commissioners that gave me the title of chief along with my name. And it was an interesting story because at the time, the president of our 5 board of commissioners was the retired garrison commander of Fort Meade, Maryland, which is the home of NSA and some other places. So I had to do an analogy in military terms, and that's how I finally won him over to let me have the legal title of chief, as I explained it in military terms, and that was basically how I did it.
Gotcha.
Because his analogy was I was the Secretary of Defense, and I said, no, I'm the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, and I'm a general, but you can call me chief. So there's a story that comes with that.
All right. Spencer, you got anything that you had a challenge like that when you got hired?
No, I other challenges, but not related to title.
Okay. All right. So in Spencer's case, I'll come to you, Spencer, on what situation or what happened for your department to say, we need to hire a fire chief?
Yeah, Chief, I think to put it in one term, it was consistency. We the volunteer fire department had been going to the town council, preparing them for this, but what really brought it on was consistency in meeting our operational needs to the community. We had holes in our shift schedules, and so we were scheduling our volunteers on shifts. We would have holes, and that would mean that it was just up in the air who was going to show up. Fortunately, we had some very dedicated people who did that, and we were able to, consistently get out crews, but we weren't sure. So we had holes operationally, and then administratively, we had a significant number of issues. Our processes, our communications, our structure really was dependent on who was around that day, and how things were done was really dependent on who was around. So I would sum it up as consistency. We weren't consistent in the way we were delivering to the community, both on the operational side and the administrative side.
Okay,
We
great.
were and I'll leave it at that.
Well, good. Norvin, you got anything to add or something different for you?
Process for us was slightly different coming into Savi. Being on the outskirts of Portland, the history of the organization was there was a fire at a local school that ended up burning down because of the response time it took from the closest Portland Fire Bureau station to get there. So the residents there, in many ways, when small organizations are formed, they go, we have to make a change. They got legislation from the residents that said we want to form a department. First year was yes. The second year was now we need to fund it, and it became a volunteer department. Well, as things evolved, call volumes increased, and they had firefighters that were living on the island, and a couple of them were sitting on the board at the time, and they said, we need to take this to the next level. Call volumes increasing, that's getting more complex. We want to bring on a professional chief. And then they reached out and said, in order to do some of the things like Spencer described, in consistency, in bringing it to the next level, because as we all know, if you are a volunteer responder, you've got your livelihood outside of it. And they wanted someone that could focus on the training needs and the administrative needs of the organization.
All right, great. And for our listeners, he has said it a couple times, but he was a fire chief on an island. So what you get is what you got. And how long did it take for Mutual Aid to get there?
Whew. Well, it's better when you're in the Portland area, and it's quicker. Up on San Juan, it takes a minimum of an hour and a quarter ferry ride to get there from the main line. Minimum.
And the ferry's got to be in the right place at the right time.
Exactly. It
So
can't be in the straits.
In your case, as you said, you had some scheduling and things like that the public said, hey, we want to do it. Now we're willing to fund it. So Mike Robinson, anything to add from your hiring process? You're muted, Mike.
In our case, it was actually created by legislation. So the 14 volunteer companies and their umbrella organization, Carroll County Volunteer Emergency Services Association, they put forth a task force that consisted of citizens, volunteer leadership, members from our county commission and the state legislature, and they determined there was a need to go to a combination system, primarily because of EMS staffing needs. So they had to go to our state legislature, get enabling legislation, and then the following year the legislation was passed, and it created a countywide Department of Fire and EMS. And with that, they created the position that I now hold. So it was actually through a process started by the volunteers. There was a lot of need for administrative oversight, centralized purchasing. They already had a countywide 911 center, so it was the next logical step. And again, with response issues, particularly daylight hours, and we operate 16 ALS transport units. The problem was that the individual corporations were hiring their own people, and most of those people were part-timers from the larger career systems, and it just was not working out in terms of staffing. So they actually created what exists today.
Well, you also brought up, I would say it's a fairly creative idea in that all the volunteer fire companies banded together to get what they believed is an improved system. And so that
Yes,
would be
and
something else to talk about.
yep, and I'll add that at the time, each one of them had their own SOPs, SOGs, their own running assignments. There was 14 totally separate independent departments, and in my last 3 years, our goals have been to make it one operating system with commonalities.
Okay. All right. Well, Norvin, and I know you guys don't look at the questions doing them we're not doing them in order. So, but Norvin, when they hired you, when you walked in the office, they gave you a key and said, "Here's your office." What did you see, or how did you learn what your greatest challenge was going to be?
Rewind yourself to any promotion that you took. You thought you knew what you were kind of walking into, at least cursorily, until you got there and you're like, oh man, this is nothing like I anticipated. And from my standpoint, coming from Tualatin Valley, which is a large combination department, protected portions of 3 counties, we had 30 stations, 450 line firefighters. I ran 100 volunteers. The biggest piece, you walk in as the chief into your new role, and it's quiet. That's it. Here's your keys or your code to the door. Here's your computer, and you've got a board meeting coming up, and you've got to put together financials. Well, I can't go down the hall and ask our CFO, hey, what do we got going, or turn it over to her. And as you know, Tualatin Valley had a very robust finance system. Well, that lands on you. If you're the first chief, remember, it doesn't matter if you're the chief of FDNY, LA, Chicago, or the smallest department in the nation, your obligations are exactly the same. Whether it's standards or whether it's reporting from a financial standpoint, you just don't have the staff to do it. I think that was the biggest piece of, I picked up the phone a lot and called my peers and called the people I worked with at Tualatin Valley and you and others that I had met along the way and said, I need some help. How do I do this? What can you help me work through? Because, wow, it's just me right now. And I had a lot of volunteers that were willing to help out, and they meant really well, but they weren't within the fire industry. So it took a different nuance.
Yeah, it's very interesting because Thomas Von Essen was the commissioner of FDNY on September 11th. And obviously I got to know him well because we went to New York a lot. And he asked me one time, he goes, what's the difference between German Township and FDNY? And I go, I have no idea. He said, scale. The job is exactly the same. The tasks are the same. It's just scale. He said, I have 12,000 people and you have 40. So Mike, what did you see as your greatest challenge when you first got unlocked the door?
Well, the greatest challenge was it was a change management process. So you're looking at the autonomy of 14 volunteer departments, and they really had never had a boss or a coordinator or anything to that extent. So my challenge was coming in and eliminating those barriers. There was obviously a lot of suspicion. Believe it or not, I knew the majority of them because many of them had actually been subordinates of mine. In fact, the president of the county commissioners at the time had worked under me on the shift that I was the shift commander of. So it was really a lot of interpersonal dynamics that were present and a lot of challenges because now I was empowered as a change agent, but a lot of that change I knew was going to be resisted. Something as simple as me showing up on a call, not necessarily to take command, but just to show that I had presence. I wanted to learn about the system. Every policy change, because it was a change, there was going to be some resistance. So one of the first things I did, I brought in Dr. Burton Clark, who most of you are familiar with from the National Fire Academy, who actually lives in one of our municipalities, but he lives in another county because it sits in 2 counties, but we brought him in to help shepherd our strategic plan. And I brought in a group of 46 stakeholders from all the volunteer companies, people from some of the corporate employees, and we sat down literally for about 4 months and went through a comprehensive strategic planning process. And that was what really brought us together, knocked down a lot of the barriers, and for the first time, people saw that we're in this together, that it wasn't about empire building or anything else. So,
all right, great. Well, you got, well, we might have just lost him. He brought up a couple things I want to come back to, interpersonal dynamics and change management. But Spencer, you're different. Excuse me. You're different than Norvin and Mike because you were internal. They already knew you, where Norvin and Mike were hired from the outside. So what was your greatest challenge? One, being an insider, and two, maybe you knew some of the problems that you had.
Yeah, I did not have to face. Fortunately, I did not have to face the same sort of change management. And I will say we were going. You know, we were fresh out of COVID. We were coming out of COVID when I got hired. We were hit hard on the volunteer side by COVID, and we were ready for change. And we had been asking for this from our town council. So I didn't have to deal with that same challenge. I'll be honest, I'd put staffing is consistently our greatest challenge, but in the sense, my perception of my job changed tremendously, and that was a challenge for me. I had been a battalion chief of another combination department on the career side, 5 stations, and had done some of that previously. And so I was a little out of practice for command, and had been a firefighter and a captain on the volunteer side. And so I thought, you know, the first thing I need to do is practice working at the back of a Tahoe. And I was quickly rudely awakened. Because things had changed so much over COVID, we were really 2 people for 15 minutes. Air closest mutual aid. It's not an hour and a half by ferry, thank goodness. But we're 2 people, and with myself now 3 people with for 15 minutes. And so there is no sitting at the back of the Tahoe. And so I really had to up my game. The other side of it is air employees are we are a combination department, and our employees are we decided to make sure they were all part-time working full-time for other departments. And so they are really, really good at what they do. They all work for very busy full-time departments and humble me very often. So my challenge was initially to think that I had to be at their level, and I could not, because I won't ever have the experience of a Hampton firefighter or Richmond firefighter. And my challenge was to get them to accept me as I'll be your C player. You can count on me to be able to do fundamentals. I won't be able to, you know, flip around and do Australian rappelling off of the local paper mill here, but you can count on me to do certain things. So I needed them to understand what I was going to be doing, and change my perception of what my job was. I'll put it another way.
You said that you explained that what your job. What was the top thing you told them? This is what I believe my job is.
Well, initially, I thought my job was to, like I say, sit at the back of a Tahoe and be in command, and really, it wasn't. It was to do task level firefighting or EMS or rescue or whatever it was, until we had the staff to support myself falling back to command. And sometimes that still doesn't happen, you know, just because of the way incidents play out. We don't run a lot of fires or anything like that where we require that. But, you know, I guess the biggest challenge is still staffing in that regard. Tomorrow, we've got 2 guys out on FEMA. So these guys, like I say, we've got some really good part-time people. 2 of them are FEMA rescue specialists there. One's in Florida and one's in North Carolina right now, which wiped out our schedule for October. We're happy to share them, but tomorrow I have a 3-hour gap where I'm the only person. So I'm scrambling right now to try to find some staffing. It was originally, I didn't have anybody but myself. So I'll be on shift with one other person tomorrow. And that's just, you know, that's the different sort of challenge that I'm sure Chief Robinson and I don't know if Chief Collins ever had to face that, but I'm sure Chief Robinson, a larger department and a larger system is a little bit different. So.
Well, I was going to say Mike probably did not have this similar kind of issue. What you're having is that you have to wear two hats. You're going to wear your firefighter. Both Norvin and you wore your firefighter hat when the tone went off.
Yeah.
Until you got enough firefighters there to be able for you to take your firefighter hat off and put your chief's hat on. Correct. And that's a balancing issue. And then I when you said that, I thought of this one fire department who called me up, because this is what their fire chief said one day on a motor vehicle accident with extrication. This young firefighter who's been trained said, he said, the chief said, get the battery. And the kid said, let me have the jaws. And the chief said, get the battery. And the kid said, I've never used the jaws on a real run. And the chief said, get the battery. God damn it. Guess what? He got the battery. And so that chief forgot all about who he was. He is about developing the people who work for you to do the job when you're not there. So, I mean, I don't know if any of you have any comments about those kind of things.
That was one of the things I was going to mention when I was listening to Spencer talk about that. And it's a very different dynamic. And I was going to say, you guys, especially Mike's department, much larger, many more resources, even though you've got distance and otherwise, and you've got the volunteer dynamic. I'll draw back to Savi as the prime example. When I was brought on, you had some people that were like the chief that I replaced. He was the dairy manager for the local dairy, and he had been with the department for a long time. Well, when I came in, you were expected to be the administrator, which is what the board wanted. But when, like you said, John, when the call dropped, you became a firefighter. There's one time, and when you're in the station, this is very different, right? So when it goes from a volunteer staffed and you don't have an onboard chief or a career person, when the tones drop, you've got whatever your timeline is. So your reflex time being 7 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever the case may be. Well, I'm sitting in the office. Tones drop for a car fire next to a field in the middle of the summer. I'm sitting in there. So I throw my gear on, I get out to the rig, and I'm like, okay, I need another responder. This would be really nice if I had another responder. I've got citizens swinging by the station because it's on a main road. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to go. So that was a completely different dynamic. I'm used to Tualatin Valley, where we have a smells and bells kind of thing, and we can send like 3 engines, a truck, a battalion chief or 2. I get on the island, call drops, I'm taking the engine by myself. I arrive, do the size up, put the pump in gear, pull the hose line, start to do an attack on it, make sure no one's in it. Then I have another volunteer that rolls in and goes, Chief, I'll take the hose line. And I'm waiting for other people to come in. And that's a very different mindset when you're the first chief of a department and you're growing it and you're there. Totally different dynamic.
Yeah, good. Well, Mike, I want to go back to when you talked a few minutes ago. You used the word interpersonal dynamics, and probably one of my more favorite classes at the National Fire Academy was that class. And so talk about the value of interpersonal dynamics as from a leadership perspective that you had to use and encounter.
Yes, and I took the same class, and a lot of application of it since then. So, and we've all been chief officers, and we've all dealt with the personalities of people. So if you're a volunteer fire chief, you've got a big ego. You become the first paid fire chief, your ego you think is even better. So I've gone through different iterations of leadership from the time I was a brand new 25-year-old volunteer fire chief to a career chief officer in a big department for 15 years to I'm now in this new position, and I started out in a closet in our law office. Now I got a whole suite of offices. But the reality was I thought I was somebody, but I was really nobody. and I hadn't validated myself among the people. So I very quickly transitioned into what I'll call, and what everybody else uses the buzzword of, a servant leader. And so my role, and I did go to a lot of calls initially, not so many now, but my role was, what do you need done? Do you need me to be an incident commander? Do you need me to help you pull the hose? I'm still a very active paramedic. EMS is 80% of what we do. Do you need me to jump in the back of the ambulance and do a 12-lead EKG? So I saw myself, much like you all, in a multitude of roles, but at the same time, my obligation as an appointed official was to be that overall leader of the system. And sometimes your greatest challenge is, particularly as you're evolving, is to determine what is your role specific to the situation. And so it's very difficult to define what your role is every day. Now, as I'm over 200 full-time people, there's 3 other chiefs besides myself, a shift commander. It's very easy. Now I find myself going to a lot of meetings, which also is not a healthy thing, because you disconnect yourself from your people. So I came into my office this past Saturday, and I went to a local store to buy a couple cases of bottled water for my office. One of my off-duty career people was there, and he came over to help me load my car up with the water, because I had just been out. I got a total hip replacement, and I didn't know who the guy was. And he introduced himself as one of my shift guys, and I didn't know the guy's name, didn't know who he was. And I said, wait a minute, this is a special moment for me, because I've totally become not only disconnected from the volunteers, but here's a guy who I hired, who I processed, and I don't even know his name. And so I followed up with an email. Turns out he was on FMLA leave because he just had his first child. So I sent him a very personal email, and I'm backpedaling. So the greatest challenge is being that servant leader, not getting disconnected with where your focus should be, and trying to balance all things among all people.
Great. Thank you. Norvin, anything else
thing.
anything on interpersonal dynamics from you, Norvin?
I was going to say, I would tie in, and you're right, Mike, that the buzzword is servant leadership. I would challenge people to look up a couple more. One you've probably heard of, and one it's evolving. One that you've probably all heard of is transformational leadership, and that usually partners really well with servant leadership. But some of the stuff that you described in your story there, in reconnecting and having that moment of pause and introspection, I would say another leadership theory to think about is authentic leadership. There's a lot of stuff, and that's where servant leadership has evolved, because being an authentic leader is you're genuine, you're caring, you're sympathetic and empathetic to those that you're with and around, and you take time to reflect. And that's an important piece that I would say that all chiefs need to do from time to time, regardless whether you're a career or volunteer chief, is taking that time to reflect and say, okay, what could I do better? Because you've seen the Paul Combs cartoons and everything else, that if you've got a leadership issue or a challenge, and Spencer and John have taught it, as we do Beyond Hoses and Helmets and the other stuff, or the workforce solutions, is if there's a leadership problem, you might want to look in the mirror and see how much of that problem is you, and stop deflecting and be authentic and say, I messed that up. Just like you said, you sent a personal note, you backpedaled a little bit, but I bet it was genuine on trying to reconnect, and now you're acting differently. That's authentic leadership.
Yeah. Well, and I do want to say, I did hear you say you had total hip replacement, Mike. So congratulations that you're actually, I don't care how long ago it was, it's still total hip replacement. So it was successful, I take it.
It's been a month. It was my second one, and compared to the way it was beforehand, anything's an improvement.
Well, good for you. So Spencer, anything else on total
hip replacement?
Hip replacement. What do you know about that, Dr. Cheatham?
I'm planning one next week based on what y'all are saying now. So,
anything else on interpersonal dynamics?
No, it has to be, one of the top things that you concentrate on, and yeah.
Yeah, I mean, again, the big thing is sort of sum it up is you got to get along with people.
Yeah.
And you don't have to break your back, but you may have to bend your back. But there comes a time when you're going to say, enough is enough. I'm not bending anymore. This is as far as I'm going to go. And every leader has to hold their integrity, their honesty, and their name.
Yeah, and I will say from a different standpoint on that, the interpersonal relations. I was fortunate. I owned a convenience store for 10 years and had to and did some customer service before that. The interpersonal skills that I learned in that and in other customer service jobs as I was growing up, it's paid a lot on the political side of this job as well. The interpersonal skills there, which we've had some good strides. We went from not having any political presence at all to having a chief now at every council meeting, at every council committee meeting, and we have a county and a town that supports us to representing the fire department to the county as well. So that's paid off a lot. There's the interpersonal relationship skills there.
Great. So I want to switch, Norvin, and I want to talk just a little bit about change management, because that new fire chief, whether it's Mike, big department, to Spencer, or you, a smaller departments, it is about change management. So what technique, what have you found is effective in change management?
I think Mike hit a big part of it, and that's connecting with your stakeholders. What I've seen, though, is a lot of people, you come in, you're new, you're energetic. If you're like Spencer, that's catch-22, because you've been around the organization a long time. You've probably seen what the challenges are, and you're like, okay, I'm going to fix this. And you've got a lot of energy, right? If you're newer, you've got that honeymoon period, so to speak, right? Where you're learning, you're getting to know people, you're getting to understand the nuances. And then, especially when you're new, you don't know the inner dynamics of the players yet. So you've got to be reserved with you go in, or you're going to get one of the potentially minority voices that comes in and they sound like good ideas because you've seen them work. And if you start going down a path, it may not be the best one. So I would say if you look at some of the change management strategies that Harvard Business has done, and you put together your stakeholders, you come up with a plan, and then you figure out how to communicate those strategic changes based on your values, vision, and mission of the organization and the stakeholder groups, and you nuance the changes to those groups. So if they need to have more time, you need to do more training, you pace it out, knowing that especially if you're in a smaller organization that's predominantly volunteer driven, it's going to take you longer, because if you drill once a week, that means you have 4 contacts a month with your individuals. It just draws out the time. One of the things I have seen, and you can read any of the stuff about as well as experiencing it, is along the way, people lose focus on your future state of the organization and change. You have to build in celebrations when you've hit small step milestones. So I would say you've got to go slow, you've got to engage your stakeholders, and you've got to celebrate the successes along the way.
All right, great. Spencer, anything to add?
Chief, just we did a transition class, and Pat Lynch had some interesting comments on that. She said 25% of the people are going to be against you no matter what. 25% are going to be for you. It's that 50 that you've got to pull along. And she said you've got to learn how to ignore that 25 that's going to be against 25% that's going to be against you no matter what. My personality, I'm very agreeable, and so it's hard for me to accept that hey, 25% of the people we might lose on something like that. But I think as a leader, in having vision on where the department needs to go, you have to learn to accept that.
All right, great. Mike, anything else on change management?
Yeah, I think Norvin used the term engagement. You've got to allow your people to be engaged, and you may have an idea, but if they're not engaged with that idea, and if they don't take ownership and possessing it just as much as you do, then you're not going to be successful with that change. And while there's always going to be resistance to change, your goal should be challenging the people to follow that change, to see how it goes, with the understanding that if that change isn't successful, we may go back, or we just abandon that and go in a whole nother direction. But without that engagement, you got to get rid of any of the autocratic tendencies that you may have, and again, focus on the group think and do it together and collaboratively.
Yeah, and I would say that I expect you guys would agree with this. At some point in time, when you see a program's not working, stop. Quit doing it. Just because you started a program doesn't mean you have to do it forever. So it's like, oh, this is not working. Stop, change it maybe, or just throw it totally in the trash can. Because if you just keep doing it over and over again, they're failing. And as Norvin said, celebrate successes. Our members, your members, don't want to fail. They want successful programs. So I think that's important to recognize that, there are things that we try and it doesn't work. So accept it. So, all right. So we're going to go to our final question for the group is, and I'll go to, I don't know, I guess I'll go to Mike first. As the new fire chief, what advice would you have for another person who's considering taking this job as a new fire chief?
Well, the biggest thing is keep an open mind. Secondly, forget about where you came from. While that experience is relevant and it may be important, probably the most disturbing thing to those that you now have to lead is going to be focusing on your past. Your past may be important, it may establish you, but you've got to focus on the future, which is the combined future with the people that you're supposed to lead. If you come in just trying to duplicate where you came from, it simply is not going to work. While you may bring some best practices with you, you need to keep an open mind, and you need to understand that if you're going to be successful, it has to be about them and not so much about you. So you have to consider, and particularly if you weren't the chief before, but maybe you were an assistant, a deputy, or what have you, now you're moving up to the chief, something you had always aspired to doing, it may not be the way you want it to be. And you really have to gauge the climate and the environment that you're going to work in so you can be successful. If you're going in there just to create your own legacy, then you probably shouldn't be taking that job at all.
All right,
So,
great.
You have to gauge your environment, and it has to be about them and not about you.
Yeah, I know many fire chiefs who failed when they came in, and all they ever said was, well, that's not the way we did it at XYZ Fire Department where I came from. And they failed to lead that organization. So thank you. Spencer, anything for you on what advice would you have?
Chief, I wholeheartedly agree. I had written down some thoughts. We don't jump into things on the fire ground. We size things up. We get to understand stuff. And even coming from this department, being a volunteer, been here 29 years, and really understanding, there were some things I didn't understand because my perspective changed. And so I had to reevaluate, what was really going on. I had to reevaluate my size up, if you will. And I had to do that. And I guess before we go, I would ask if I can change your question just a little bit. Chief.
Sure.
When, one of the things that I got to see in the IFC traveling across the country, when localities or departments went to hire the first fire chief, there was a tendency to hire somebody with a significant operational skill. And I'll share it with you a story of a cousin of mine who was a Charlotte firefighter. He retired as a captain, and then he was hired in North Carolina to become the first fire chief of this small 3-station volunteer county system. he had no preparation for that. Great firefighter, great operational leader, not a lot of budget experience, no political experience, and he wasn't a volunteer beforehand. And so while he looked great on paper to those who hired him, which was the Board of Supervisors of the county, I think a lot of localities make that's a wrong decision. They need to hire somebody with great interpersonal skills, a lot of things we talked about here, strategic vision, some past background in budget management and things like that. Not to say that somebody with that operational background can't do that, but they need to make sure they have those skills as well. And I think that's a mistake hiring the first fire chief that a lot of localities make.
Great. Norvin, anything advice you would have?
The only thing, so not to reiterate what Mike and Spencer said, what I would add in is remember to reach out to peers and your established network. And then got to tout BCOS stuff that we put together, the new Chief's Handbook. Go reach out, look at resources that are there and reach out to people. If you're listening to this or you've got peers that are thinking about taking on a new chief's role, encourage them, go to symposium, interact, reach out to the board of directors, reach out to the people that have lived it, reach out to me, to Spencer, to Mike, to John, to a number of others of us that have done it, and leverage your network. And don't be afraid to say, hey, I'm stuck. What should I do? What do you think? Because if you get outside of your microcosm and get a different perspective, it always gave me a different sense and feeling when I could, you get marred down in your stuff and get very hyper focused. If I could pick up the phone and call Spencer and say, hey, here's what's going on. What am I missing? Getting that outside of the area thought can really help you take that next step. And it can encourage you because they can say, hey, yep, you're on the right track. Have you thought about this, that, or the next thing? So that's what I would add to
Great.
it, John.
Thank you. Well, it's and I do want the audience to know Norvin is finishing up his work on his PhD. I am always so impressed with people that I know who get their PhD. I know how much work it is. I shouldn't say I don't know how hard it is. I don't know how much work there is, but I do understand it's not easy to get. So I know Norvin is going to be glad to get it off his plate as well, so he can have a life back. So, but keep at it, Norvin. You're going to get it done. So I would go back to Norvin and Spencer. If you guys want to give your email address. So for the audience that's out there, we'll give you a second to grab your pen. And, I see Spencer already put his in the chat session the chat session. So maybe Norvin, if you'll just do that, then they can see that as well. But as Norvin said, we're all willing to help you. If we don't know the answer, we might know somebody to call. And so Mike, just welcome back. So I was just finishing up, Mike. If you can go to the chat session and put your email address. So if somebody had a question for you, they could contact you. If you can do that, then we're done. So anything to finish up here, Spencer, anything you want to comment on?
No, I'll just reiterate what Chief Collins says. And I didn't say this in my introduction, but I am proud to be a board member on the VCOS section. And if we can help, we want to. And if there's something that we're not doing that we should be doing, let us know.
Yep.
And thanks for the opportunity.
All right, Norvin.
John, thanks for moderating this for us. Great job as usual. Thanks to Michael and Spencer as peers and having this great open dialogue that we have. Know that if you're going into this, whether you are in your 49th year or you're just starting out, we are a greater family, and reach out and know that you'll be successful and you're not in it alone. Thanks.
All right.
Glad
Thank
everyone was able to attend.
Michael.
Yeah, again, as they've both said, use your network. The IAFC, and particularly the Volunteer Combination Officer section, has a wealth of resources. If you've never been to the Symposium in the Sun, even though it might not be a Symposium in the Sun this year, but there is no greater place to do networking than that 3 or 4 days that you spend there with people much like yourselves, the same issues, the same areas that they have dealt with, you will get a wealth of knowledge, but more importantly, you'll establish a network. So there's lots of help out there. We're all one big community, and we're glad to do whatever is needed. And
Yeah.
certainly technology brings us that much closer together.
Yeah.
So I welcome this opportunity today and appreciate the invitation.
Well, I thank everybody for these three guys for agreeing to do this. Mike had never done one of these with me. Norvin and Spencer have. So, but Mike was, not. I guess he wasn't. He knows me, so he was pretty sure I wasn't going to embarrass any of us. And but these panel discussions have been very successful, but more successful than I thought they were. And we're giving good information out, and we're not relying on PowerPoint slides. And sometimes we instructors PowerPoint people to death. So I want to thank my presenters, my panelists here today for participating, and those who are in attendance. The VCOS is here to serve you. We are here to help you. Please contact any of us, and we'll be glad to try to get you some assistance. With that, I'm going to say, we're going to sign off. God bless. Everybody be safe. Thank you very much. Have a good day.
Take care, everyone. Thanks for attending.
All right. That's it. Take care.